This is the crazy, fraudulent, deceptive reason why natural health practitioners are considered alternative. I'm Dr. Dan. I help chiropractors and natural health providers double and triple their practice with one thing: communicating more effectively. So this is a hot topic. It's a big topic, and it's something that most don't know and most people don't ever talk about. And I want you to ask yourself the question, do you know, or maybe have you even thought about, why do natural health providers get labeled in the category of alternative? Chiropractors, homeopaths, naturopaths, even some and often nutritionists get labeled as alternative. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought why or where that came from? I'm gonna tell you right now, it is one of the most fraudulent, deceptive lies that our society has ever been a part of. I get a little fired up about this because most people don't know. Listen, I didn't know. But when you understand the history of how this all came to be, you realize most people don't have a shot. Most of the public, when they're trying to get health for them and their families, do not have a shot because of the lies and the deception that was put out by one John D. Rockefeller and Abraham Flexner. It is absurd, and I know you're gonna be like, Dr. Dan, you're a little extreme. You're a zealot, right? You're extreme. I think that you will be too when you understand where this comes from. Now, let's take a little trip down memory lane. Let's go through history. John D. Rockefeller, the oil tycoon, was the first billionaire in America, had all the money, really had a lot of power, and more than most people have any idea about. And as I'm reading about this and going deep down that rabbit hole, you just realize he had control of the media, he had control of the business, he had control of the money. And so what happened is in 1907, his chemicals made plastic, and it got him even thinking, and this had been going on for a while. This was just kind of one of the key turning points. He realized that he could not only take over the oil industry, but the chemical industry, and then eventually the medical industry. So he teams up with Andrew Carnegie. They create this Carnegie Foundation. They create the General Education Board that ends up funding a guy named Abraham Flexner that was set out to go through the entire country and visit all the medical schools and the hospitals. He comes back and writes up a report about what he sees. At this point, the tides begin to turn because that whole report was about the fact that these hospitals and most of the medical schools are not up to standard. So they got to reestablish the standard, because if you go back and you look, in 1800s, it was predominant. At least half of the healthcare was delivered by homeopaths that used herbal remedies. They used natural care. Chiropractic started in 1895, obviously looked at the body differently than allopaths. So the former healthcare system was largely, if not at least half, very non-invasive care. It wasn't drug therapy, it wasn't drugs and surgery. And this is the big until, and this is why it's so critical, is that it was all bought with money and power and greed. It wasn't some, hey, we've decided that evidence-based care and the best approach to treat healthcare is this model. No, it was, we can make chemicals, require them to be approved and patented. That will become the new established health care. And we'll call it allopathic care. And it's the new standard at that time. From that Flexner report, half the medical schools shut down, and so they got a chance to reestablish the new norms. Also, General Education Board. Now you've got money moving through the American Medical Association. In 1932, the top lobby group was the AMA, American Medical Association, and they spent 20 times more than anybody else lobbying Congress to get their way. And here's the other thing that happened is Carnegie, Rockefeller, JP Morgan, they had the power. More power! I love capitalism because there is an element of it that says the strong survive. If you provide value, you get that value back, and ultimately nobody can tell you exactly how much you should or shouldn't make because you're providing value. But when it gets into the hand of the wrong people, I'm gonna tell you, this was one of the key elements in American history that is a very, very negative thing. And I say negative because in a republic that's free, the idea that somebody is going to come in and say the only accepted standardized healthcare system is allopathy. Allopathy is the treatment of symptoms and disease, and it ultimately is from patentable chemicals. You can only use these chemicals that are patented by this foundation and approved by this FDA. It gets so deep. So then what happened? The homeopaths, the naturopaths, the chiropractors, everybody that was outside of the allopathic realm got labeled as alternative. So I often say, who died and made the medical doctor the king of human physiology. And see, what they did then also is anybody that didn't approve to their standards or allow them to come visit their school to give a report on, they used media to exploit that school. And so they would go to the Wall Street Journal or Chicago Tribune or wherever media outlet they could, and they mocked that school, saying, oh, they must be hiding something. And then that school began to go down and down and down because people heard about the negative things about the school because they wouldn't allow them to come in and write a report on them that would set the new standard. You see how crazy this is? I almost sound crazy. I almost think I'm crazy trying to dream something up. I can't make this up. Why does this matter? Because as a natural health practitioner myself that have lived in that, the low levels of trust that come with being an alternative, right, holistic provider has consequences. And so why is it that the established norm is that the medical doctor is the king of all healthcare? Like, we listen to them like unlike anybody else. And so you go back and you look at this and you're like, really? We're 113 years later. Who isn't throwing the flag on this? Why aren't we seeing this? Dr. Dan, if this was so bad, wouldn't somebody have seen this and reversed it or changed it or at least challenged it? And I would say that's a great question. I would remind you of all the financial ties that from 1930s to 40s to 50s to 60s that just continued to build, and the amount of money, and you get insurances involved and Blue Cross and Blue Shield and all these big corporations that get involved. And you know better than I that they want one thing: money. Money, 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 money. And with that comes power, and with that comes greed. Anybody that pokes their head up and says, I just don't think this is right, gets chopped off. And so this is the stuff that most consumers don't know, and this stuff that most practitioners don't know. If you're a practitioner out there, you're like, wow, I never knew this. This is why people come in and they've already got a low level of trust for you, or they've got a higher level of trust for somebody that literally peddles drugs. And I mean that with all due respect. The medical doctors are not the problem. They are essentially a pawns in the big scheme, saying, hey, you just need to peddle these drugs. Here's the symptoms. And this goes back to this. Physiology 101. Is the body weak, defective, bound to break down? Or is it strong, pre-programmed for health, ability to recuperate and self-heal? Because depending on how you look at it, what viewpoint you start with, you're going to get to a different destination. This is what fires me up. Alternative care is not alternative care. It is healthcare in a different form that starts from a different place. And I will argue to this day, the scoreboard is so bad right now when it comes to healthcare in this country and health of our people that we need a change.
Preach.
And I would argue that the first change is to not look at the people who've been talking about the body is strong and powerful and able and capable of healing as alternative.
Preach.
Because they have solutions that unfortunately the world hasn't gotten because they've been deemed alternative.
Yes, preach!
This is the start of many rants just like this, but I hope this helps, and it helps you to get a grasp of where this come from, to show the deceptive and the lies, and to be able to bring awareness. Ephesians 5:12 says, do not take part in the seeds of darkness, but rather expose them. And that's what I am going to continue to do to help you help more people as a practitioner. And if you're not a chiropractor or a practitioner and you're just listening in, I'm going to tell you right now, there is help for you. But you can't look at alternative care as alternative care because that's been bought by a lie. You have to be the biggest advocate for you and your family's health. It's up to you. With that, I'm all fired up and I'm here to help you. Love you. God bless. Dr. Dan, I'm out.